Wir haben so vieles geschafft, wir schaffen das.
We can do this, a rallying call made by Angela Merkel a year ago. Germany took in over 1 million refugees in 2015. But the mass sexual assaults in Cologne on New Year's Eve and radical Islamist terrorist attacks have swung public opinion. The right-wing AfD party, founded in 2013, is stirring up the rhetoric against refugees and could even overtake Merkel's party in her own federal state. With a year to go till the national elections, the Chancellor is under massive pressure. Can she counter the skepticism? With state elections held in Mecklenburg-Vorpommern on September 4th, campaigning is well underway. In Ribnitz-Dammgarten, Merkel's Christian Democrats have recruited a local sailors' choir to boost their presence. The town is located within Merkel's parliamentary constituency. But she's here today to lend her support to the CDU's candidates for regional elections. As the clock strikes 11, however, the party faithful are still waiting. The Alternative für Deutschland party, or Alternative for Germany, are already here, represented by candidate Rüdiger Press. His campaign is focused on opposition to Merkel. The AfD is targeting discontented voters, especially those disappointed with Merkel's policy on refugees. Press finds her motto, "We can do this," abhorrent.
It's completely uncontrollable. Germany having to save the world scares me. It's bound to go wrong. Let's be a bit more modest instead of this megalomania.
Directly adjacent and on the other side of the political spectrum are the Left Party. Normally, they're always against Angela Merkel and the CDU, on principle. Refugees, however, are another matter.
I have a very critical view of Merkel's general politics, but in saying "we can do this," she expresses exactly what I feel. It's a goal I likewise hope and work for. It's a challenge we want to solve. How she goes about it is another matter.
Something Merkel could explain here today. First, however, she goes for a mingle around the market square, where she visits local traders selling their wares. Good news, the honey is regionally sourced. The Chancellor is not here to talk politics. The main point of events like this are photo opportunities, images of Angela Merkel cozying up to the people and vice versa. Although here would be a rare chance to gauge real opinion on the street, on refugees, for example.
It's too much. There are too many of them.
I always say we were refugees ourselves after the war. We came from what was then Stettin. I have nothing against refugees.
What we need now are a few clear-cut answers to reassure the population. I believe in the slogan, "We can do this." But what I'm missing is a clear statement on how to do it.
So there are people willing to listen to Merkel, except their Chancellor chooses the safe option. She talks about a range of issues: faster internet connections, boosting tourism, less bureaucracy. But on critical issues, Angela Merkel remains vague.
Of course we want security, social security, job security, but also security from criminals and Islamist terror. This is the major challenge currently facing us.
The major challenge of refugees goes unmentioned. Instead, a sing-along of a regional Mecklenburg folk song. The angry crowd shouts that Merkel must go. Discontented voters here in the state capital Schwerin are an ideal audience for the Alternative for Germany party. Refugees are something these people know only from television. Although less than 15,000 live in the entire state of Mecklenburg-Vorpommern, this is the issue that gets most people worked up.
There needs to be more done for our own people as well. There are a lot of refugees coming in who don't belong here.
Let's be honest, it's awful. We women are now afraid to go out at night.
Mrs. Merkel is a narcissist who is unable to admit mistakes.
The star here in Schwerin today is Björn Höcke from Thüringen. He represents the fervently right wing of the AfD. His arguments are well received here, and it's always the despised Chancellor and her refugee policy that's to blame.
Millions of people came here en masse last year or were invited by Angela Merkel and her colleagues in the old parties. And they have plunged our country into a national crisis.
The national crisis is apparently the fault of these people. In the summer of 2015, Europe saw refugees entering Europe on an unprecedented scale. And the numbers of people coming from Syria, Iraq, and other war zones, mostly via the Balkans, continue to increase. When tens of thousands were stranded in Hungary in appalling conditions, the Chancellor took a fateful decision: an open-door policy on refugees, effectively rendering EU asylum rules redundant.
That duty also means providing protection to those who deserve it. The Geneva Convention on Refugees applies to every member of the EU, not just Germany.
A decision of conscience, argued the otherwise pragmatic Chancellor. It resulted in the arrival of an estimated 1.3 million people. Local authorities soon struggled to cope. Here in Berlin, it took some refugees months to even register as refugees. It was not the kind of organizational display Germans expect from their government. As for the Chancellor, she's made this the issue in her political legacy. She's invested more time and effort promoting it than any other subject, with a promise that became the motto for her refugee policy.
We can do this. If we encounter obstacles, we'll overcome them.
People across Germany followed that call, with donations or actively helping out. Countless local groups organized everything from cookery classes to German language courses. But others extended a different kind of welcome. Refugee homes were set on fire as protesters in a number of towns openly voiced their hatred. That hatred has also been directed against the Chancellor. Merkel's response to being called a traitor was unusually emotional.
If we now start having to apologize for putting on a friendly face in desperate situations, then this is not my country.
Neustrelitz is another stop on the campaign trail in Mecklenburg-Vorpommern. Merkel's CDU party has invited local tradesmen and managers to discuss business policy with the Chancellor. Officially, refugees are not on the agenda today. But Merkel knows her audience is keen to hear her views on the subject.
Of course, we can also talk about refugees. At the cabinet meeting today, we discussed refugees and the labor market, where we see problems and what we can do.
Then something surprising happens. Instead of refugees, people at the meeting prefer to discuss topics ranging from aspects of dentistry degrees to specifically local issues such as a road bypass. Did the Chancellor get a lucky break? Only at the very end of the meeting does a man take to the microphone and bring up the question of refugees.
Madam Chancellor, do you not believe we may have brought the danger of terrorism to Germany with the asylum seekers?
Islamic terrorism, or IS, is not a phenomenon that came to us via the refugees. We already had it, and it's now the job of our security services.
But there have been cases of imported terrorism. In July, a man from Syria blew himself up in Ansbach, injuring 10 people. This was just days after a young Afghan refugee seriously injured 4 in an axe and knife attack on a train outside Würzburg. Both perpetrators claimed allegiance to so-called Islamic State. And on New Year's Eve in Cologne, a crowd of young Arab men sexually harassed and abused several hundred women as the police helplessly looked on. But the Chancellor has remained undeterred, and this summer repeated her promise from the previous year. This time, however, not quite so upbeat in tone. She now had to address fears among the population.
We can do this, just as we've already done so much over the past 11 months. And that's why we're also going to overcome this new challenge facing us, called Islamic terror.
Except she tends not to bring up that name while on her campaign tour of Mecklenburg-Vorpommern. Merkel is meeting an agricultural cooperative in the tiny village of Zinzow. Over venison and beer, local farmers want to hear how she envisages their future. The pressing issues here are the price of milk, crop protection regulations, biogas. But here too, the topics of war and refugees come up.
I think I speak for many when I say that we're concerned about the current foreign policy of Germany and the EU. I'm genuinely scared, looking at the various wars all around the planet, about whether we're going in the right direction.
We are working 100% to ensure that our children and grandchildren can also live in peace. And the basic guarantee for us is a united European Union.
Concluding the question and answer session. Here too, Angela Merkel only mentioned the issue of refugees when asked, and even then made only vague statements. But she did deliver plenty of nice group photos together with the men and their machines. Enough to satisfy the host, but not to explain the Chancellor's policies.